in relation to this topic. And basically, he is explaining an ayah in the Quran, which is one of those ayat in the Quran that if you understand this ayah, you will really understand, you will grasp the issue of Tawheed. Right? There are certain important ayat in the Quran that you simply must understand. And because they contain the traces and the roots of shirk. And one of those amazing verses in the Quran, Ibn al-Qayyim, he actually gives an explanation of this ayah in his book Madarij as-Salikin. And it is highly relevant to the topic that we are engaged in. So, the point which we have reached in our lessons is that we've come now to this issue of al-wasa'it and ash-shufa'a, interceders, right? So these deities that you see people are worshipping today, they express the kalima la ilaha illallah, but at the same time they are calling upon Sheikh so-and-so and seeking rescue from Sheikh so-and-so and whatever else. Right? These are their shufa'a. They claim that these are their interceders. To understand this, what is going on, there's two ayat in Surah As-Saba, the 34th surah, verse 22 and 23. And in these two ayat, Allah Azza wa Jal, I will mention the ayat to you first. He says, قُلِ ادْعُوا الَّذِينَ زَعَمْتُمْ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, say, meaning, O Muhammad, say, call upon those whom you claim besides Allah. Call upon them. Meaning, those deities whom you are claiming besides Allah. Call upon them. Call upon them. لا يملكون مثقال ذرة في السماوات والأرض ولا في الأرض. So what Allah Azza wa Jal, He does, He makes four negations. He makes four negations. And these four negations are in a stepwise fashion. The first negation, He says, that they do not own even an atom's weight in the heavens nor the earth. Then He says, وَمَا لَهُمْ فِيهِمَا مِنْ شِرْكٍ. Nor do they have any share in them both. The second level. Then he goes, the third level, وَمَا لَهُ مِنْهُمْ مِنْ ظَهِيرٍ. And Allah does not have from them any aider or helper. And then in the next ayah He says, وَلَا تَنْفَعُ الشَّفَاعَةُ عِنْدَهُ إِلَّا لِمَنْ أَذِنَ لَهُ. And nor does intercession benefit with Him except for the one to whom He has given permission. Right. Now, so Ibn al-Qayyim, he says, his explanation of this statement here, what is the importance of this verse? The importance of this verse is that if you were to take any type of shirk in the whole of the world, no matter who it is or where it is, no matter in which century or civilization or nation it is to be found, right, across the entire globe, and if you were to then go and analyze the justification behind that shirk, as in, what is it that is leading these people to commit the shirk? What underlying argument, what underlying belief is there that is causing them to worship these idols, or the sun, or the moon, or the trees, or the stones, or the angels, or the jinn, or the righteous people, or what's the underlying justification? You will find that all of those justifications will come only to four things. In other words, that all of the roots, the avenues to shirk, are only four in number. They are only four in number. Right? And those four are all mentioned in this ayah. They're all comprised in this ayah. Ibn al-Qayyim says, he says, thus, the mushrik, the one who worships others besides Allah, he takes something as his object of worship on account of what he believes about that object will lead him to will basically bring some benefit to him. Right? No one worships anything unless he believes that this thing is going to bring some benefit to me. This makes sense, right? Otherwise, why does a person, worship things? Otherwise, he would be mad. If he didn't believe that, okay, this thing that I have in my hand, or this cross, or this stone, or this tree, or this man, or this tomb, unless he believed that there's some benefit going to come to him, he wouldn't be worshipping this thing, right? So all of it comes down to benefit, right? So this is the key word now, benefit, and nafa', right? No one worshipped unless he believed that there was some benefit. Now, if you think about this concept of benefit and nafa', how can someone bring about a benefit? What are the ways and means through which a person can bring benefit? And there are only 4 ways that a person can bring benefit to another, right? So either you are the owner, complete owner of something, right? Either you own something. So for example, let's say I own a fruit farm. I am the owner of the fruit farm, right? I have the ability now to take fruit from my farm, of which I am the owner, and I can go and give it to someone and benefit that person, right? This is complete ownership, right? This is complete ownership. So in the first part of this ayah, Allah Azza wa Jal, He negated from anyone besides Him that they have ownership in the heavens and the earth, right? So He said, لا يملكون مثقال ذرة في السماوات ولا في الأرض, that they do not own even an atom's weight in the heavens and the earth. So if ownership is negated, then the ability to benefit is also negated, right? The benefit, the nafa' has now gone. And so therefore the justification for worshipping is also gone. That makes sense? Right? So that asal of shirk has been cut off. Then in the next part of the ayah he says, وَمَا لَهُمْ فِيهِمَا مِنْ shirk. So after negating complete ownership of anything, Allah Azza wa Jal, then He denied partial ownership. Because you don't have to be a complete owner, you can have partial ownership. So for example, in the analogy which I gave earlier on, maybe I am not the complete owner of this fruit farm, right? There are apple trees, there are orange trees, there are pear trees, there are raspberry bushes, there are whatever else. Okay, maybe I'm not the complete owner, maybe I'm just a partial owner. I own 50%, I own 40%, I own 30%, right? My ownership still allows me to bring benefit because I own something from it. So I can take something from it and give it to someone else, right? That still puts me in a position of one who is able to benefit. So now, in the second part of this ayah, Allah Azza wa Jal, He now negated this possibility, right? That Allah Azza wa Jal, not only does anyone besides Him own anything completely, right? So no one owns even an atom's weight completely. Not only that, they do not even partially own even an atom's worth, right? So there's no partial ownership either, right? So this now removes the ability to benefit, right? And because a person worships something because he believes that it will benefit him, then that asal has now been cut off. Is that understood? That asal has now been cut off. So 2 roots have now been cut off. Then he says, after this, وَمَا لَهُ مِنْهُمْ مِنْ ظَهِيرٍ, that Allah Azza wa Jal does not have amongst any of these deities which are worshipped, none of them are an aider and a helper and a supporter to Allah, right? This now is the 3rd level. Let's go back to my analogy. That okay, maybe I am not the complete owner of this fruit, the fruit fields and the farms. Maybe I'm not a partial owner, but I could be someone who actually helps and assists in the maintenance and in the upkeep and in, so I work on the farm, I aid the owners and I support them in doing their job, right? So so I have some role in the running of this farm, right? So that's another reason why someone may come to me to attain some benefit, because I'm involved in the running of this thing at least. Even though I'm not the owner, I am not the partial owner, right? But I have some involvement and I'm aiding and supporting the owners. They rely upon me, I support them. So I have some say now. I have some, someone might come to me. This level as well has been negated by Allah Azza wa Jal, because He said, وَمَا لَهُ مِنْهُمْ مِنْ ظَهِيرٍ, that in His creation Allah has no helpers, no aiders. And this is another reason why you might go to someone, because you believe he can benefit you. Allah Azza wa Jal does not have any aiders, right? There is no, like what the Rafida, you see the Rafida Shia, they believe, and likewise many of the Sufis, they believe that Allah has aiders and helpers who aid Him in His creation, right? They have power over His creation, right? And they are able to influence things in His creation. All of this is negated. This is cut off. This is another level, another route, or another justification as to why someone might be worshipping or calling upon or something or someone besides Allah Azza wa Jal, right? That this person or this thing is an aider and helper. So the angels do not aid or help, right? Rather they just simply are given tasks that Allah informs them to. It's not as if they are aiding or helping Allah Azza wa Jal. It's not from that angle, right? Rather Allah has created them and given them tasks to do, right? Allah governs His creation through them and by them. But it's not from the angle that yes, they are somehow helping and supporting and aiding Allah. No, it's not like that, right? This is negated. Likewise, no messenger aids and supports Allah in His running of His creation. They don't have a say. They don't have, So this now is cut off as well, right? So benefit from this angle, that is cut off as well. And then we come to the fourth and the final one, right? So remember, they are going in reverse order of misguidance and seriousness, right? So obviously the worst one is to believe that yes, anyone owns, or there is someone who is a creator alongside Allah, or owns something alongside Allah. Most people won't be believing in that. Very few of the people who believe in that. That's the gravest, most serious, and the one that's known to be the greatest falsehood, right? So they're in reverse order, from the very clear to something which is less clear. So now we've removed the third root or asal of shirk. Then we come to the fourth, right? So he is not an owner, he's not a malik, he is not a sharik. These are the four terms. Either he is a malik, negated, or he is a sharik, partner, sharer, negated, or he is a mu'een. This is the meaning of dhahir. Dhahir meaning an aider, mu'een. Dhahir, an aider, negated. We come to the final one. So he's not a malik, he's not a sharik, he's not a mu'een. What is he? He is one who intercedes, shafi'. Right, meaning that this person doesn't own anything, he doesn't share in anything, he doesn't have any, he doesn't aid or support in the running, but he's someone who can come and maybe he can intercede on your behalf, he can ask on your behalf. He will go and say, look, he will go to the malik, or he will go to the sharik, and he will argue something on your behalf, he will ask on your behalf, right? So this now is the fourth level, the fourth reason or the fourth justification for worshipping others besides Allah, because you believe this person, he's able to intercede with Allah and able to bring some benefit to you, right? So can you see how in this ayah, as Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he says in this passage, I've kind of really summarized this passage. That's the meaning of this passage. You'll find it at the beginning of Madarij al-Salikin in the first volume. And he follows it up finally. He follows it up with another statement which we'll conclude our lesson with, and it will lead us to the final session in the next lesson, inshallah ta'ala. He says, so is all of this clear first of all? Yeah. It's very crucial to understand this ayah, because this ayah is an amazing ayah, right? It gets down to the essence of shirk and what's going through the mind of a person who's committing shirk, right? He's worshipping other things besides Allah because he believes there's a benefit that they can bring to him. And that benefit is predicated, is assumed upon one of four things. Every shirk in the world, it comes back down to a person believing or assuming one of these four things, right? Either that thing he's worshipping is a malik over the benefit he is seeking, or that thing he's worshipping is a sharik over the benefit which he is seeking, or it is a mu'een or dhahir over that benefit seeking, or it is a shafi', right? Crucial to understand this thing. So if you understand all of this, you can see now that most people are not going to believe that yes, someone owns something besides Allah, or shares with Allah in the ownership of that thing, or he aids and supports and helps Allah in the control of that thing, right? No one really believes that, right? So this is why the shirk of most people, the beginning point, the entrance point is this issue of intercession. It starts here. Then it moves up and it gets worse and worse and worse, right? That's why you see that when you see the start of shirk and you come to the eventual outcome of shirk, you see that in the later centuries, you found amongst the extreme Sufis, amongst the extreme Rafida Shia, they began to believe that yes, they are from those that they worship, from the Imams, or from the awliya, who actually own and regulate part of Allah's creation, right? It moves up to that level. Yes, it starts with intercession, then it moves to someone being an aider and a helper to Allah, then someone who actually owns part of or shares with Allah in the creation, right? You will find this when you go and look into the books of the extreme Sufis and the Rafida. In fact, one of them, this man called Ash-Sha'rani, well-known hardcore Sufi, he's written a book on, basically it's to do with the awliya and their miracles. And and in one of them, he cites one of them, he says, I abandoned saying kun for 20 years out of respect for Allah. Do you know what he's saying? He's saying that I abandoned saying kun, meaning kun fayakun, be and it is. That I did not say this for 20 years only to show adab with Allah Azza wa Jal. Right? This is a direct translation of a statement directly from that book, from one of the things that he... Right? So basically this is now believing that this individual is a creator with Allah. Right? And so you can see the justification for shirk, that if a person believes that this person has the creative ability, power and ownership that Allah has, then this is the justification of shirk. But no one starts here. No one starts here because it's known to be falsehood. Rather, the entrance point is always what? Ash-shafa'a, shufa'a, wasa'id. Right? Someone who is a shafi'. Then he's upgraded to a mu'een and a dhahir. Then he has a sharika. He is a sharik with Allah. Then he becomes a malik. Right? This is how it is. So in this ayah, Allah has cut off all of these things. Now I want to come to this passage, which leads us to.
Sorry, why did he say abandon saying?
Okay.
Why did he say to abandon saying?
Because he wanted to show good manners with Allah. As in that he's got the power that Allah Azza wa Jal has. Because Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, kun fayakun. Allah says, be and it is. Whatever He wills in His creation, be and it is. Right? So this man is saying that I didn't say it for 20 years because I was being respectful of Allah. I just wanted to show respect to Allah by not competing with Him for those 20 years. Right? So to allow Allah, as if to say, to allow Allah to manifest His greatness and grandeur, out of respect, I didn't say kun fayakun for 20 years. This is what this is kufr. If obviously if it's correctly narrated, we don't know half these stories whether they're true or false, but it's been narrated from some of these people, right? So this is outright disbelief. So this is what he means. So yeah, we'll finish with a statement of Ibn al-Qayyim. So he says, وَمِن جَهْلِ الْمُشْرِكِ, from the ignorance of the mushrik, اعتقاده, his belief that the one whom he takes as a wali or a shafi', from his ignorance is that, so remember we're talking about the fourth level, we'll call it the entrance point. This is the entrance point. So from the ignorance of the mushrik is that he believes that this person, who he's taken as a wali or a qutub or a sheikh or a faqir or the one who has sir or walaya, whatever, right? He believes that this person can intercede with Allah and that he will benefit him with Allah in the same way that you see the kings and their ministers operating in this creation. Right? Meaning that as if, like you see with the kings, the minister can just come, enter upon the king and say, oh king, your people want such and such. Right? They're asking for such and such. What does this situation imply? It implies, number one, that the king's not aware of what the situation of his people is. Right? He's not all-knowing. He has to be informed by his ministers. Number two, these ministers can just come and walk in and present the needs. They don't necessarily need permission. They just come in and present, So there are certain presumptions about the situation that are false as it relates to Allah Azza wa Jal. And for that reason, you see that, as Ibn al-Qayyim explains, they believe, these people who believe in the shirk, in the shafa'ah, they believe as if it's like how it is with the kings. Right? وَلَمْ يَعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَشْفَعُ عِنْدَ أَحَدٍ إِنْدَهُ أَحَدٍ يَشْفَعُ عِنْدَهُ أَحَدٍ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِهِ. They do not know that Allah Azza wa Jal, no one can intercede with him except after he has given his permission. No one can come, no prophet, no messenger, no one can just come and start making intercession. Rather, you need permission from Allah Azza wa Jal first. Why? Because the right of shafa'ah belongs only to Allah. Right? Only when He says intercede can anyone intercede. Right? Whereas the kings of this earth, they cannot do that. Right? So he then says, وَلَا يَأْذَنْ فِي الشَّفَاعَةِ إِلَّا لِمَنْ رَضِيَ قَوْلَهُ وَعَمَلَهُ. So not only does he have to give his permission before anyone intercedes, he will only give permission for the one whose speech and action he is pleased with. Right? Not anyone can intercede. Only that person whose statement and action is pleased with will he allow him then to go and intercede. And then he says, after that, كما قال تعالى, he mentions the ayat in the Quran, مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يَشْفَعُ عِنْدَهُ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِهِ. This is proof for the first point that I mentioned. Who can intercede except with his permission? And the proof of the second point is وَلَا يَشْفَعُونَ إِلَّا لِمَنِ ارْتَضَى. They will not intercede except for the one with whom he is pleased. So permission and pleasure. Permission and pleasure. Al-idhn wal-rida. Permission and pleasure. And then this leads to the third thing, which is, what is Allah pleased with? What pleases Allah in speech and action? It says, وَبَقِيَ فَصْلٌ ثَالِث وَهُوَ أَنَّهُ لَا يَرْضَى مِنَ الْقَوْلِ وَالْعَمَلِ إِلَّا التَّوْحِيدِ وَاتِّبَاعِ الرُّسُلِ. And Allah Azza wa Jal is not pleased of any speech and action except tawheed and ittiba'. Tawheed and ittiba'. That you worship Allah and you worship Him in accordance with what the messengers brought. That's what he's pleased with. Right? So he says, وَأَنْ هَاتَيْنِ الْكَلِمَتَيْنِ يُسْأَلُ الْأَوَّلِينَ وَالْآخِرِينَ كما قال أبو العالية كلمتان يسأل عنهما الأولون والآخرون ماذا كنتم تعبدون وماذا أجبتم المرسلين. As these two words, everyone will be asked about them, the first ones and the last ones. As Abu Aliyah said, 2 words, the first and the last people will be asked about them. What did you worship? What did you worship? This is Tawheed. And how did you respond to the messengers? This is Ittiba'. Right? So this is what Allah Azza wa Jal is pleased with. If He's pleased with this, then He will grant permission for you to intercede. No one will intercede except after Allah has given His permission. This is how intercession works. Right? But as for this intercession which is shirk, then there's a presumption that these awliya, these shufa'a, these people, they can automatically just intercede with Allah Azza wa Jal. Right? As if they have control over shafa'a. So then he says and finishes by saying, فَهَذِهِ ثَلَاثَةُ فُصُولٍ. These 3 aspects, they cut off the tree of shirk in the heart of everyone who understands them. If you understand these 3 things, the roots of shirk will be cut off from your heart. لا شفاعة إلا بإذنه. The first one. There is no intercession except with His permission. ولا يأذن إلا لمن رضي قوله وعمله. And He will not give permission except for the one to whose speech and action He is pleased with. ولا يرضى من القول والعمل إلا توحيده واتباع رسوله. And He's not pleased with any speech and action except His tawheed and following the messenger and following His messenger. To the end of what he said. That's the essence of what he said. So is all of that clear from what we mentioned in this lesson? There's many things we discussed, but if you go back and revise the lesson, there are some very important things for us to understand about the reality of Tawheed, and especially this ayah. You have to memorize this ayah and understand how it relates to the way that shirk begins and then grows in scale and seriousness, and the entrance point of shirk and what the rationale behind it is, and how the Quran has come and invalidated all the routes and avenues towards shirk, and they are 4 in number as we see in this ayah. So with that we'll conclude our lesson there today. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een.